Hello friends, welcome to the Jazz Ranch. I'm the alto dominant ego man. Welcome hip cats, groovy chicks, and finger popping daddies. You know, you can call me Mr. Ego if you like, you know, and I tell these stories about the KH. I'm going to tell you a story about the time he played with Phil Woods and he was still in college, you know. Now this is kind of a long story. It has three parts to it. It has the first part was the gig, the second part is the after hours club, and the third part is back at the pad. You know, so if you can hang out with me to the end of the story, I'll try to talk fast to make this go by. It won't drag on. But anyway, you know, the KH was going to college at BU, and he had met these musicians, you know, were playing in Springfield. So he's playing with these great players in a house trio in Springfield, you know. Anyway, this one night, this fellow comes in, his name is Andy Siegel. He's a bass player who's going to college up at Springfield College. You know, in other words, like he was like same age as the KH. So they became friends, and Andy said, well, you know, I studied with Phil Woods at a band camp last summer. I'm going to bring him up to play, you know, a gig up in Albany, you know, in the basement of a church. And I want you to do the gig. I want you to be the piano player. So I cash. Wow, yeah, man, yeah. And I got a drummer, you know, so the three of us, we're going to go up there. We're going to back up Phil Woods. Whoa, wow, we're going to back up a great musician like that. You know, he's not just a kid. KH is just like 21 years old or 20. Anyway, so they went up there, you know, and at first he was kind of nervous. You know, you got to play with a great player. Well, anyway, I will tell you the first part of the story was that Phil Woods was very encouraging to these young musicians, you know. They went in there, he was probably 35 and they were like 20, you know, and like that. They had a packed house, the basement of a church, you know, and KH has to play on an old upright piano and so on. Well, Phil was very encouraging to them. You know, he egged them on and said, yeah, play it, man, play it. You know, yeah, groovy, man, yeah. That kind of thing, you know, anyway. So they had a good vibe from Phil. And guess what? After the gig, Phil says, well, let's not go home. Let's go to an after-hours club and hang out, you know, have a couple drinks or whatever, you know. They were 21, you know. Actually, you know, you could be 18 in New York. Anyway, so they went in this bar. It was a dive, you know, and there were like three drunks in there, you know, like hanging out at the bar. You know, Phil sitting at the bar having drinks and he got into an argument with a redneck guy. Then he went to the back room, you know, I don't know what he was doing back there, but anyway, he came out and there was a piano in the place, you know, a spin-it piano. And Phil says, hey, he calls the KH over, he says, let's play some piano. Phil sits down at the, you know, the bottom part, the lower part of the keyboard, and KH is on the upper part. Phil starts playing Yesterdays, you know, I mean, Yesterdays, yeah, Yesterdays, not the Beatles tune, Yesterdays, you know, the standard. Anyway, so they come to the middle of the tune, Phil is playing the bass line, the chords and so on, KH is playing the solo and the melody, and Phil goes into these chromatic 2/5s, you know, in the middle of the tune. Anyway, the KH is trying to follow him. Whoa, oh man, where's he going? Up, down a half step. Okay, oh, got 2/5, down another half step, 2/5. Phil he was wigging him, you know, if I mean, he was wigging him. And he said, wow, far out, man, Phil, he's a hip cat, he's playing piano. Well, anyway, Phil got sort of energized by that, and you know what he did? He went out and got his saxophone, came in, and he's sitting in a chair, leaning up against the wall, playing the blues. Now, how about that? It's 3 o'clock in the morning, there's like 3 drunks in the place. All of a sudden, you know who walks in? Chet Baker. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so Phil is playing the blues, and the KH is playing blues. So the bass player goes out and gets his bass. Drummer gets his drums. Now they're jamming at 3 o'clock in the morning in this dive bar in Albany with Phil Woods playing the blues. Now how about that? You cannot make this stuff up, you know. So after that, it's about 4 o'clock in the morning. They go home, right? They go back to Andy's pad, you know, in the town there. That's where he lives. So they're back at the pad, and they're looking around for Phil. Where's Phil? Phil wasn't anywhere to be seen. Well, they heard this voice out in the backyard. It was Phil Woods. He's out in the backyard, in the middle of the yard. It's a beautiful starry night. He's looking up at the sky, and he's saying, Bird, why'd you leave me down here? Come back. I need you, brother. Why'd you leave me down here? Bird. He's talking to Charlie Parker. He's talking to Charlie Parker up in Jazz Heaven. You know, this is Phil Woods, man. He was a real cat. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. I mean, I love that story. Anyway, that's the end of it, you know.